Well, we're going to need some wood. I need 4 legs, which is the ones that are standing up there, and I need to make 3 frames which are going to wrap around those legs. So therefore I need, and there are 4 pieces of wood in each frame, so that's 12 bits of wood for the frames. And I got these cut. I don't have a bandsaw or anything like that, so I just got these cut at a local wood supplier. It's pretty cheap to have that done. I just tried to make this as easy as possible, but allowing me to make exactly the shape of table I needed. Let's just have a look at the height of these legs. So it's 2 or 3 centimetres, maybe 3 centimetres lower than the final table will be, because there's a frame which is going to go about there on these legs. So if I just stand here and put my hands down, just let them drop, then remember that's where that first knuckle is where I want the top of the table to be. So whatever that measurement comes to, then minus 3 centimetres or 2 centimetres, doesn't really matter. That's the height of my legs. So that's that measurement, and the other measurement is the size of these frames. Let's move these legs out of the way. Let's put them down so that I don't send them flying. So the frame's going to be like this. Here's one. So the short piece is on the outside, and then top and bottom. And the longer piece is on the inside, like that. How big is that going to be? Well, that's determined by how much space you've got, and also how much the size of the piece of plastic or glass or a smooth surface that you can put the wedging table onto when you fill it full of plaster. So I kind of underestimated, actually. Let me just show you the mirror I used. So when I moved here, I found this mirror, and you can see it's much bigger than the frame I ended up with, but that's because I wasn't really sure, having never done this before, I wasn't really sure how much border I needed of clay around the edge to hold the wet plaster in. When we get to that stage, you'll see what I mean, that you need a kind of boundary between the edge of the frame, and this is filled with clay to stop any plaster getting underneath. As it turned out, no plaster didn't spread at all, so it wasn't really, there was no need for such a big border. So I could have had a bigger wedging table, but on the other hand, my studio is not huge, so I'm happy with the size I ended up with. But again, I'm not giving you measurements because it's entirely down to what suits you. But you definitely need something which is bigger than the frame you're going to put the plaster into. So we need to make up 3 of these first of all, and I'll show you what you need to do to get that done. So I wasn't really sure what equipment I needed to get this done, so I've learned my lesson. The most important of all is one of these. So something which will quite powerful. It's 18 volts. This screwdriver and drill in one, and it makes life possible and quick. So I got a better job done because of this than because of anything else, I think. So get something like that. Screws, that's the other important thing. Without those, I don't know what I've done. Probably had to glue it all or something, but I like the fact that it's all just screwed together very quickly. These are 75 millimeters long, 4.2 millimeters thick and 75 millimeters long. I mean, I know nothing about these things, but it's long enough, the screw's long enough to go through one of these pieces of wood, and enough, 2 centimeters or so left over to go into the next bit of wood. So that's what I'm judging it on here. They're called drywall screws. I'm sure those DIY experts of you out there will know exactly what all this is about, and I don't know why you've been watching this video really. But for those of you who don't know and never done this before, you can watch a real amateur at work here. The other thing you need is, there's this wire mesh, as I say. I haven't shown you that because it's obviously buried deep inside the plaster. it said in the instructions to use 10 gauge wire, which is this stuff, and it's very thick actually. I think it's the same sort of stuff used for old-fashioned coat hangers, wire coat hangers. So it's very stiff, quite difficult to cut and bend, but I guess it's very strong, so it supports the plaster. So anyway, I did what they said, and I got it to work. But yeah, it needs a bit of effort, this stuff. So I'm not convinced this needs to be quite so thick. But look how much I've got of it now, so I'm going to use this. I guess feel free to use something more like a ready-made wire mesh, or something a lot with a smaller diameter, easier to use. Along with that, something to cut the wire and to shape it, so just some pliers. I think I should have used bullnose pliers, they're a bit stronger, these are a bit weak. But that's all I've got for now, so I've got to buy some decent pliers at some point. Along with the drill, I'm also using, I need a drill bit for screwing in screws. That's that one. Sorry, you can't see me. There we are. That's that one. There we are. And also one of these to just, what's it called? It's got some fancy name, I'm sure. It creates a little hollow when you drill a hole, so that the screw doesn't stick out at the top. I don't think that's necessary really, if the screws go in tightly enough, but it just makes things a bit neater perhaps. I'm not used to preparing wood, I don't really know what you're supposed to do, but I did have this old plane from years and years and years ago. I'm not sure why I've got this, but it still works, and it's just basically a blade, and it's still fairly sharp, which lets me just take the corners off some of these pieces of wood that I might otherwise get a splinter or something like that. And you do need to take each piece of wood and sand all the edges, just briefly, because when they come ready cut, then all these bits are full of little possible splinters. So I'm just going to start by sanding each of these corners and also this edge too. Finally, just some little screws as well, some extra little screws for putting, for holding the wire in place. That's another, just a smaller screw, doesn't need to be nearly so long, that's about 2 or 3 centimetres long. Maybe an inch. I think that's everything that I need. It probably isn't, and I'll come back to, I'll come to on some point and realise I'm missing something. But obviously the other big thing I need is plaster, but that's a completely separate process which we'll get to hopefully eventually. So we'll start by putting these frames together. So let me get rid of all these tools out of the way and put the frames together and show you how I did that. First thing I'm going to do is just sand, as I say, each of the edges of these pieces of wood, just with a bit of, I've got a block here and a bit of sandpaper, glass paper, just to take off any of the burrs which came about when the sawing happened. There we are. Well, I won't show me doing all those because it's going to be very boring. But I want to do that for each of the pieces of wood, and then we'll start to assemble it. So we're going to make 3 frames, these pieces of wood they used to be called 4x2s, 2x4s, that's right, 2 inches by 4 inches. But they're now more like 5 centimetres by 10 centimetres. And as I said, I cut the lengths according to the size of the piece of glass I was going to use. And the important thing, I think, is that they're going to be assembled like this. So the short one goes on the outside. So you're just going to have to work out the measurements that best suit you to make it in this way. So what we're going to do is put 2 screws here and here, and here and here to bind these 2 together. But to do that, I'm going to drill 2 holes because it makes it much easier to screw them together. So I'm just going to be very loose and put one there, one there. So I'm just making a mark with a pencil. I'm not going to fuss about exact measurements of this, that and the other. Some people If you want to, you can be very precise about all this stuff, but I quite like just just doing it live. So same on this side. Yeah. And I need to reproduce it on the other end. So I don't think I need to really assemble it. Let's have one there, one there, one there, one there. I find it helps to put pencil marks and not just drill straight into the thing. Hopefully you can see those, maybe not. Just lets me know where I should be drilling and where I shouldn't, because it's quite easy to forget which holes you need to drill and which ones you don't, when you need to drill a hole, when you need to screw the screw, etc. So I've now got to drill those 8 holes, and I've got another piece of wood, yet another bit of equipment I didn't tell you about, so just an old piece of wood which I'm going to use to drill down into so I don't drill into the concrete floor. Let's change this. Oops. So let's put that in there. Tighten it up. Okay, so the drill bit I need depends on the width of my screw. So I've got on the box it says 4.2 millimeters screw. I'm not sure what that's referring to. It's certainly not the shaft, but I've got a 5 millimeter drill bit, which is enough to make a hole big enough for this screw to go into, but not so big that it just slips through all the way through. So, yeah, let's just drill straight down to that here. You can feel when it's gone all the way through. And again, let's just make sure the speed's right. So I need to drill and faster maybe. You can always just check, does the screw go through? Yes it does, so that's fine. Other side. So that's that one. The next one. So that's enough to assemble these now, so let's move that out of the way. Oh yeah, before I do that, let me just countersink, that's the word I was looking for. Let's countersink these screws. So, oops. I'm going to use this little thing now, which is called a countersink, as I now remember. Again, very roughly, just making a little indentation so the head of my screw doesn't stick out. See how rough and ready I'm doing it. You know, there's nothing even about this, but it's going to be strong enough, that's all I care about. The aesthetic of this particular wedging table is not my priority, as you can probably tell. And in a way, the rough and readiness of it is the aesthetic. That's good enough. So, let's not lose my drill bit. So now I'm going to take this end one and I need to drill into that. So now you don't want to You've got to be careful not to have these at an angle, so there's no point drilling it like that, like that. It's got to be square, and I find the easiest thing is to prop these up. They kind of find their own squareness that way. Something like that. But again, there could be, yeah, let's just put this one underneath as well, just to be on the safe side. So if we put them both, if we put them both on top of that, then I can be pretty sure I'll line it all up carefully as I can. But that it'll be, nothing will be at an awkward angle, and they're thick enough that they do stand up. So there we are. Unless I really lean on that one way or the other, that's pretty stable. So now I can drill straight into those holes. So let's take the, check you can see. Let's put this bit in, which is the drill bit. And now let's get a couple of screws. In fact, let's put the 4 screws in. 1, 2, 3, 4. And just making sure, just give it one more glance that it's steady. So just leaning on this, make sure it's steady and not rocking. Let's just let's screw these screws in. There we are, and the countersinking means that they're not sticking out. And this side, I find it easier to turn around, so let's do it the other side of the back here. There we are. And we can do the other side, so we can flip this over. Just do the same again. Should line up nicely, which it does. 4 more screws. I calculated, I think you need, no I didn't calculate, I counted. I think you need 74 screws for this, which seems like a huge amount. But this uses up 8 of them. Sounds horrendous that, but it's done the job. So here's our first frame, pretty hefty. So we need 3 of those. I'll make those and then get back to the video.